Hi, good afternoon, everyone. So we're good to start. I think we have 77 participants. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming into CEDAR FinTech Labs Knowledge Webinar. We are discussing today a very, very interesting topic on the digital, which is around open banking and APIs. So we have 5 presentations today. A quick introduction to the subject. So I will actually invite each of our participants for their view. But open banking, as the standards came out a few years back in Europe, and it's implemented in certain European geographies. It's another revolution very similar to where telecom infrastructure was shared across different operators. The financial service institutions are sharing their platforms on a common API structure for organizations to open up and customer to have a flexibility to move across financial institutions. So that's the open banking, which we all know of a regulatory announcement. And then APIs, of course, came along over the years to the current state where APIs are now published by most retail and wholesale banks and financial institutions globally to do business with partners, to do business with end customers, to directly use open APIs to transfer the transactions either through host to host or multiple other mechanisms. So first, let me quickly introduce the panel today. So we have Mr. Rajasundaram Subramanian from Expleo. Raja, welcome to the panel. Raja comes with significant experience in digital banking, testing, assurance, multiple spaces. We have Akash, Anand from Profile also on the panel. Akash comes with real life experience on the banking and the business side, and then how his softwares can, as a fintech, solve this. We have Valeriy from IMTF, which is one of the leading RegTech software provision solution provider, who's going to share their experience from Europe and other markets. And we have Raheel from Codebase, who has been helping the digital banks and the traditional banks who wants to turn digital through the transformations. As well as we have a very important innovator in terms of a challenger bank called ZiggyPay, who has used technologies which we are discussing today from Codebase and has a real life experience. So I'll first invite Akash, you to give us a view. What's your view of open banking's applicability to Middle East as well as Asian region? And what's your view of opportunity available to bank and financial institutions? Akash, you there?
Well, thank you, Chetan. Welcome, everybody. I would also like to highlight the analogy of the telecom was quite an interesting one, and rather today's topic is much closer to my heart. So I'll also give one more analogy just to set the context right. Just like democracy was exercised first in Europe, namely our parent country from where we belong to, Greece. As everybody knows, Greece was the pioneer in democratizing, and the exercise of democracy was started and initiated in Greece. Same goes with the PSD2 and open banking. You know, the history, obviously everybody knows. The first PSD, which is Payment Service Directive, was launched in 2007 to regulate the payment services provider by creating a legal framework for their operations throughout EU and the EEA, the neighboring European markets. So, and then of course, after almost a decade, in September 2019, the PSD and open banking both were forcing the banks, the so-called the mainstream banks, who were kind of a powerhouse, to dominate and control the clients the way they wanted, you know. So there was a need of forcing the banks to open up their data to external providers through public APIs. In a nutshell, that is what, you know, open banking and PSD2 is all about. Open banking comes from UK, and of course PSD2 was a broader EU initiative which was exercised. So that sets the background. Obviously, what are these third parties where you are basically integrating with? It is basically called the TPPs, the third party payment service providers, which includes two types of TPPs. The first one being the account information service, which is AISP, which grants the read-only access to the customer data. Okay, and the second one is the payment initiation service provider called PISP, where you can initiate payments from customers' accounts, and not only customer accounts to do pure banking. There is a lot more which is today being done by open banking and PSD2, and it is extended to fintechs, doing a lot more different kind of case studies. Of course, all of us are here in the panel to show some of these experiences. So with that, you know, the payment initiation, the PISP and AISP are two independent channels through where the information is exchanged. So that is at a very broad level what PSD to an
Akash,
open
we aren't
banking.
able to hear your voice.
Am I audible?
Yeah, a little bit of a disturbance it was. Go ahead, please.
Okay, so again, you know, as I mentioned to you, open banking is the UK initiative and a response to EU PSD2. So both of them are basically opening up the APIs to third-party vendors. The customer enjoys the benefit of faster payments, execution, consolidation, ease of use. All this is possible not only in the context of the current scenario of, you know, initiated markets like EU and UK. Now it is extended to future markets. We are seeing a lot of trends in Australia, Asia markets. People are replicating that. We've seen some documents coming from Bahrain, which is opening up. I believe Middle East in this right context is going in the same manner. And there is a huge opportunity for the customers to benefit with this entire open banking scenario.
Thanks, Akash. I think very insightful. So I'm coming now to Raja. Raja, given that you've had more Asian and Middle East experience, if you can give your perspective and how do you see these trends in the markets where you've serviced?
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thanks. The main point I would like to discuss here is that people have different kind of understanding about different perspective about open banking. Some people feel that it is less secure or it is bringing some the equation is spoiled because of open banking, the third party being provided certain services or certain say advantages. What we see is a great opportunity. I mean, like the positive side of it is that, as Akash rightly put, it's the AASP and the PASP, the payment initiation service providers and the account initiation service providers. They play a vital role, and that actually standardizes instead of multiple hands. Basically it goes through a proper stream and proper channel, and the control authority and the controlling authority is streamlined. And one of the major advantages of open banking, which I will discuss in detail in my presentation, is that the way that the security is handled. So it's a token-based security system. So what I see is that a lot of new open say aspects are going to come into banking, and open banking basically paves a proper route, a controlled way of aggression in terms of creating openness in banking. So we welcome it. Thank you.
Thanks, Raja. Very interesting. I'll invite Valeriy, giving your perspective. Very different market, and both from RegTech as well as the European perspective. If you can give us your view on how has been the adoption of open banking as well as API.
Yes, thank you. Good afternoon. In fact, yes, indeed, I can give a more European perspective on that. So it's a long date initiative here. So that the PSD2 banks basically here, they did not have the option not to open their API. So basically they have to. What I have seen here on the market, and especially from more from RegTech, from compliance perspective, is a shift in how banks are seeing this initiative and their partners. So it started with some kind of initial fear to the unknown, fear to lack of regulations, additional risk, less KYC related to their open banking partners, etc. So we've seen this quite a lot. So banks were a bit afraid of PSD2 and the additional risk that it can bring to them, and also the fact that they might lose some business out of this. So we've also seen, as I said, a shift in this attitude of banks. So with time and with thanks to the partnerships with these mainly payment providers and additional services providers using open banking, now we see that much more confident in giving access to their systems, to their customers' data, and to their payment systems, especially when they ensure that sufficient level of KYC, sufficient level of anti-money laundering is applied within their open banking partners. And we, of course, help them with this. And also what banks do, they give also access to their KYC systems and anti-money laundering systems more and more through APIs to their partners, so they can ensure a sufficient level of compliance and respect of regulatory needs. So that's from European perspective. So it's only positive. Banks are not very much afraid anymore of this. They do not see as a threat or as a competition, and the benefit goes also quite a lot to customers, with faster payments, with faster services provided by banks and their open banking partners. So I think there is quite some future in this initiative in not only Europe, but also around the globe.
Thank you so much, Valeriy. Very interesting perspective from Europe. I'll now go over to Raheel. Raheel, given that you've been giving solutions to digital and traditional organizations to achieve open banking, if you can give your perspective on what has been some of the selection criteria and how people have been selecting their open banking partners, and how you've been able to position yourself and your firm among the very interesting case which you are going to present as well later today on ZiggyPay as well. So if you can give your perspective, Raheel.
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, it's an interesting topic, and as Valeriy and Akash and Raja has mentioned, some of the aspects of open banking when it comes to AISP and PISP, we see open banking beyond those services. And hence what we have done with our digital banking partners is basically take them beyond those two services and get into non-banking as well. So from our perspective, the open banking allows our organizations to now not just collaborate on financial data, but non-financial data, and they can use that non-financial data to expand their service offerings or bring in non-financial partners into the ambit of the banking services. We have developed over 300 plus APIs which are compliant with Open Banking Framework version 2 and version 3, which are primarily process oriented or banking oriented. But what we've added is lifestyle APIs as well, like from courier companies and so forth, and we are also including non-banking partners like food service guys, last mile delivery people, in bringing them into the ambit as well, because the monetization part from an AISP and PISP is restricted to certain players like e-money institutions or wallet providers per se. But how banks, from our perspective, would look at monetizing it to bring in other partners in and expand their horizon of offering what they can do to their customers. Vice versa, rather than going it out, they are bringing in external providers and add value to their customers per se. So that's from our perspective, which we've seen a shift because in the Middle East itself, there hasn't been that much of open banking from an AISP, PISP perspective. So we basically were advising our clients to see from an outward approach rather than an inward approach. So that's what have we been doing. And that has been taken up very well from local banks over here. And I think there is a lot of opportunity or a lot of room in expanding these services through open banking concepts.
And just a leading question there again, Raheel, given that you also approach Bahrain market, which are one of the first ones to announce a fintech hub and also clouds, as well as open banking, one of the first countries to adopt is likely to be Bahrain. So any specific action you are seeing in last 12 months in Bahrain with respect to open banking or digital banks in specific?
Yes, so from a digital banking perspective, we have seen three major use cases in the market who have gone completely digital. We have taken the first one digital in the market over there in 2018. When it comes to open banking, there has been a strict regulatory influence on promoting open banking, and they made it compulsory for every bank in the country to start with the consent management with the customers to start sharing their data. And now in the second phase, they will be allowing the utilization of the data among those banks and AISPs and PISPs respectively. So yes, the shift is there, movement is there, and the sole reason was regulatory influence and regulatory drive on these things.
Excellent, Raheel. Very interesting Bahrain perspective of yours. Moving to Temi now. Temi, of course, comes from a disruptor organization, a challenger bank organization, where ZiggyPay has made a name for itself by disrupting the market. Temi, just give me a perspective from a bank perspective or a payment provider perspective. How do you see the open banking and API banking coming your way?
Thank you. Well, I see open banking allowing banks and third-party providers working more closely together. Banks have a huge reach and many, many customers, with small fintechs or third parties can leverage each other's services. Fintechs can actually support the growth of banks and vice versa. So an example is opening up their API, bank's API services for KYC. Banks could provide an open API that could allow third-party providers who their customers bank with that bank to utilize that facility. And there's so many facilities that the bank provides today as a service that could be used and opened up for PSPs and other different type of third parties. So it's about working closer together, bringing disruption and innovation into the market while you're leveraging the strength of a bank. And this is where I think banks can benefit from opening up their services instead of closing in on themselves. And we see that in Australia as an example, where I'm from, where some of the banks now are starting to open up their services. So now you can, using third-party apps, you can download your statements from many different types of banks into one app. And these are just the beginning of these type of services that, that can be leveraged.
Excellent, Timmy. Very interesting. So let's go ahead with one of our first panelists on the view of how they have looked at the opportunity in terms of solutions and what kind of use case have they seen in real life. So I will invite Raja, you from Expleo, to take us through your presentation and the view which you have on your product as well as use cases.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. Good evening, everybody. And good afternoon to people from different timelines. This is Rajasundaram Subramanian. I represent the company called Expleo Solutions Limited, part of Expleo Group. We operate from Chennai, and it's a French-based company. And here, my perspective, especially in terms of open banking, first of all, we feel that it has to be demystified. So we choose the title to be safely demystifying open banking APIs, as you could read. When we say safely demystifying, I would like to stop on this title. It's basically to bring some amount of knowledge, some amount of awareness towards C-level and senior management professional. Why we have to understand open API, open banking APIs with the wider aspect, with the open eyes, and especially how do we approach this safely so that while we get the benefit of open banking APIs, we also do not fall prey to the newer nuances and the newer risks of open banking, or so if people are afraid. So we would like to go to the next slide and see what basically we have to offer. So I would like to, we have organized this in such a way that we would like to talk very few about Expleo, initially about what is Expleo, and then what are open banking APIs, and how the open banking APIs are organized, and how is it structured, and how do they change the banking landscape, and how do we think that our view of how does it actually change the banking landscape. And then we will see what kind of services that we offer, and our solution, our product, our solution, our accelerators that we bring to the table as part of open banking. And then we'll see a short demo, okay, if it's okay with everybody. So this is Expleo. We are a 1.1 billion company, and it's as I said, it's a French-based company based in Paris. And we, as part of Expleo Group, we are called Expleo Solutions Limited, and we operate from Chennai. And it's a public listed company in Mumbai Stock Exchange. And we are a trusted partner for end-to-end integrated engineering, quality services, and especially financial services. Our group, our entity in Chennai focuses on BFSI. We heavily focus on banking, financial services, and insurance. As part of the banking, we have been serving multiple banks, organizations in Middle East, and there are a lot of referential customers as well in the Middle East and in Dubai and Middle East region. And we have been a thought leader, a recognized thought leader in terms of next-gen digital software services as testing services, recognized by Nielsen Hall. And we are also marked as leaders by Gartner. And we are one of the top 10 quality engineering and assurance services from India. And main focus for us is basically in banking, and we understand the nuances of banking. We have been in the industry for more than 30 years, and we understand the quality engineering, and now into development as well in terms of how we can set up the open banking, how do we operate on open banking, how do we test the open banking APIs. Those aspects also we will cover as part of this presentation. So largely our business covers into consulting, engineering, and quality. As part of consulting, we accelerate the business with our customers' businesses with transformation strategies, transformation agility, management consulting, and we have a very popular management consulting operating under us. And we also work on engineering. Our main business being aerospace engineering. We are a strong engineering company, and we also have good amount of focus in terms of banking from India. And that's where actually this is called, this was ThinkSoft, S12, and then it's called SQS India BFSI. Now it's called Expleo Solutions Limited, which has been traditionally as a legendary banking and financial services company. And quality has been our main focus. So we approach with integrated quality as an aspect. And we are ISO certified, and we are PCI compliant, and we are SOC certified, and we are strong. We have a strong focus in terms of security. So can you go to the next slide, Chetan, please? So these are the countries that we operate, and we have good balanced offshoring capabilities in Romania, in India, as well in South Africa. And we have around 30 plus countries we operate as of now, and we employ 39 plus nationals all over the world. Can you go to the next slide, please? Yep, so these are the services, engineering and quality assurance and development services, DevOps services that we provide. This is a wagon wheel, and we will mainly focus in terms of demystifying safely, which means the security aspects and also some of the safe development aspects that we want to bring to the table. And our solution, our accelerators that we bring for open banking is what we're going to discuss. Next, please. So these are how our services are packaged into various different service accelerators. And these are the service accelerators such as AutoQ is our automation, test automation solution that takes care of all the API testing, API automation, API performance. And DataQ is our test data management and data solutions, big data based solutions, which are based on Hadoop. And also we have a good data test data management solutions. Similarly, we have, in terms of security, we have the CyberQ, which is the main offering here, which offers various different security aspects for open banking. So I would not dive deep into this much. I'll go into the next slide, please. Because the proof of the pudding is in eating. So the development landscape is basically one of our major forte, and we operate on these many different development tools and technologies, and this is where our expertise lies in. And yes, next one, please. So let's land into the open banking quickly in the interest of time. So we'll use this as an anchor slide. It's a simple slide to explain what is open banking API and how is it actually stemmed into the system. And when it stems in, what are the newer nuances or what are the newer aspects that it brings in? I hope all of you are able to see the screen fully. And
yes.
Yeah, thank you. So as somebody said that it's one of the panelists said that it's not ASP and PSP. We would like to focus on that for newer customers, for customers who are introducing where they are introducing open banking. These are the services that start with actually. So we'll stick to the ASP and PSP where it's a starting point, and non-financial and other services are stemming from these services or these points we believe. So when we see that we see some of these security risks and PII exposure. And how do we mitigate that is basically through continuous quality and continuous integration into security engineering and also periodic security reviews. So we'll have a short demo of open banking APIs as well. How do we set up these open banking APIs quickly? And how do we transact using a simple framework of using Postman or simple solution like SOAP UI? How do we transact in open banking so that it demystifies? That's the whole idea behind how do we safely demystify the open banking. So we'll see that as a kind of like icebreaker, how we bring this into the table and how do we actually demystify the entire open banking APIs. So can you go to the next slide, please? So this slide explains how open banking is organized, and I hope all of you are able to see. So this architecture or the structure of open banking is pretty interesting. It's not simple APIs, a bunch of APIs. There's a thoughtful structure, and there's a proper architecture that has been involved, and there is a good amount of security that actually it brings to the table, such as OAuth server, and then there is an OAuth server, OAuth 2. That takes care of the authentication. And there's a time-bound authentication service, a time-bound token-based service. And that's actually very important. Even the demo, if you go to openbankingproject.org, you will not be able to use your token or the access given to you more than certain hours. So because they want to ensure that the security aspects brought in the right time in the starting itself. So you could see that the amount of time restricted, and there is a good amount of authentication mechanism that goes into picture. And if you look at the overall stuff, if you see the OBP, the way that it's storing the data, it also has a very good similarity with open banking with PSD2. The only difference between open banking and PSD2, I would say, the PSD2 is a much more open banking, whereas open banking open banking APIs, non-PSD2 open banking APIs, they have a structured way, or there is much more structure, little bit of closeness in terms of open banking compared to the PSD2, if all you would agree, who have seen both actually. So the main aspect of this entire open banking API is that it exposes 180 plus APIs, and these 180 plus APIs are properly guarded by or properly governed by the OAuth mechanism, and they properly implement the REST APIs and the basics of what we call it solid principles in architecture terms. So when we say solid, where you have the single responsibility, the open close, the various different aspects of solid is covered in this thing, like dependency injection, latent initiate, all various different aspects of solid principles are implemented in open banking, and that's how you have a good structure and kind of like organization. So this, I wanted to stop on this because this brings a lot of confidence in the architecture and the security of open banking. So can we move to the next one? So this is where we see the new roles, and the new roles, like say we have been integrators and distributors and producers, aggregators. Now they are actually coming to the platform. So the service creation, service aggregation, and distribution now is actually blending into the platform that invites the new operators or new people into the equation, which are actually the third-party providers, or they call it TPPs. And these TPPs are largely categorized into two. Which is account information service provider and the payment initiation service providers. Whereas the account information service provider takes only the read-only view, or kind of like they can only see what's going through. They can't actually initiate a transaction. The PASP has a greater aspect in terms of, or greater privilege in terms of starting a transaction on behalf of the customer on their bank account. They can operate the bank account. I just wanted to highlight these two aspects because this is the two of the nuances that open banking brings to the table, and we have to understand the differences between them in order to have a good aspects. So now let's actually, can you move to the next one? Okay, thank you. So if you see that, what's the basic difference between without open banking and with open banking, what we achieve? Without open banking, it's actually a scrapping, it's a legacy authentication, as we could see that from this BOI slide. Its majority is basically, we are doing all these things without a proper API, without a proper channelized authentication or a gateway. I don't want to take a name, commercial names, but kind of like proper gateway, API gateway, that can streamline the authentication, that can streamline the governance aspect, that can streamline the API lifecycle management, or what we call it ALM. And that aspects are basically like the service development lifecycle, or SDLC, has actually now is into microservices, and microservices basically are into versioning. SOA versioning has taken into microservices aspects as well. So various different aspects of compatibility, forward compatibility, backward compatibility, in terms of how we ensure that we migrate the APIs with proper versioning control so that the APIs are immutable. So there are a lot of things that go behind in this open banking APIs, which standardizes and basically governs the overall landscape into a safer zone. That's what we see as one of the major benefit of open banking. And this new authentication process, as I mentioned before, is a token-based authentication, what we in the good old days used to call the Kerberos in the Unix part. So it's more of a ticketing or token-based authentication where the ticket expires over a period of time. So that is a good thing that brings, like, one particular user or one particular customer has asked for a token for a particular service, can use that particular token only for that particular service. And these tokens are localized granularly so that they cannot abuse the token, or there is no what we call it in OWASP parlance as basically broken authentication or hijacking of sessions, or basically abusing the tokens for different services and masquerading, or those kind of what we call as basically the pertinent problems that typically comes with these APIs are resolved with this token-based authentication. And this API linked authentication system is actually one of the major safer aspects of open banking. And that is basically the new authentication process that brings to the picture. Next, please. So how do we approach this? We have actually multiple different testing approaches. I will not delve deep into that. Basically, I will actually explain how Expleo brings the nuances into the table. The main thing is that we have an integrated early lifecycle validation focus that brings a lot of focus in terms of security and performance as early as possible in the life cycle, especially in terms of when you're defining and developing the APIs. So this takes care of the embedding the security and embedding the performance and developing a performance-driven, security-aware architecture, security-aware development policy, in order to ensure that you don't have to add security or performance as a salt and pepper later into the life cycle. You add it right from the start as a main ingredient into the mix. So that's the main approach that we bring to the table. So we use solutions such as open source and commercial solutions that bring kind of like proxy-based approach, where the functional testing is actually, along with the functional testing, we takes care of the security. So when you are doing the functional testing of the APIs, we can bring in the security as well as part of it. Also, as we shown in the previous slides, We support now, as Expleo has been legendary quality services and quality engineering services. Now we are into development services. So I would like to focus more on the development aspect of it, where we have secure development platform that ensures the open banking APIs are taken care correctly. So we'll run small demo that can actually show how these APIs are demystified and how we can actually bring in various different values into the mix actually. So this is what we say as the Expleo service, security engineering services. It includes both not just the process and audit, but engineering and testing and operations as well. So these are the four aspects of it. And let me quickly jump into the demo. Chetan, how are we doing in terms of time?
We have 3-4 minutes to go.
Few more minutes only. Then I'll jump into the demo because that will benefit people. So can I share my desk?
Yeah, you can.
Can I share my desk?
I think it'll be tough to switch the controls. If you don't mind, if you can just articulate when the demo.
Okay, sure. So yeah, we thought actually we'll put it in this screenshots as well. I thought of showing a video, so that'll be better in terms of UI. So it's okay. So sorry, folks, please put up with me. I have to explain it. So if you look at it, the main aspects of it, like in this demonstration, we will create an API. We'll create a new user using the users API. So this talks about how we can actually add a API, create a new user using the user API and log into the sandbox site. So we take this Expleo Bank as an example, and that's the application name that we registered. And this is one of our architect, Adip, has defined this developer email, and we created the test application for you to show. We have been working with a bank of multiple banks in Europe, especially in Ireland and other countries, where we have done this, and we are doing this open banking, both validation as well, development testing and stuff. So with that help, actually, Adip and team has come up with this simple way of explaining how we can create a user. So as you could see on the screenshot, it creates a user, and it uses the API, it uses the users API, and it creates this API directly to create multiple users. So in this case, it creates one user here. So next screen, please, Akash. Sorry, Chetan, yeah. So you can see here, this is basically like generating the customer token. We generate the customer token. Once the token is generated for a particular purpose, that particular token can be used for that particular purpose only. So that restriction is there. So then it's actually about how do we create the accounts that to transact. So to create the transaction, we created 3 banks. We call it Indian Bank in this case. So we created multiple currency accounts. One is Euro, other one is USD, and other one is INR. We created those transactions as well. So you could see that the API that's actually taking the account ID, the user ID, and the label, and then it takes the parameters, and we fill up these things, and then we send it through a simple system. And then next, please. So this actually does the transaction for 919 euros on account 1. So it's transfer the account from one account to the other account, and get accounts basically gets the account balance, and then once it checks the account balance and it's within the overdraft limit, it transfers the other one. This is another sample where we transfer 100 euros to account 2. So that's another API call that we are doing in terms of calling this. Similarly, we have another API that's actually doing a 50 euro transfer to show you how is it happening. So it goes like this, and if you see that, you can see the grant access and grant user access to view it. And this is basically the security and entitlement. And these access controls are actually specific to a particular. Can you go back to the previous screen, please?
Yeah. So thanks, I think, Raja, for
this is how it is organized, and this is how we transact and all this stuff. What we have is actually a greater platform, which we could not show you because we could not share the video. I would like to show that video at the next opportunity.
Sure.
Thank
you. Sure. So Raja, just a quick question on the way these are articulated. So bank goes through the solution procurement, and then you help them secure it, test it. In terms of end consumer, is he going to be using bank's portal, or in your experience, most regulators comes out with their own sites where they do these transactions?
Okay, I would like to answer this question from our existing experience. One of the case studies that we had it in the deck. For one of the US customers, what we are doing is actually doing the complete performance engineering and also a functional and basic various different functional and development testing, dev test for them actually. So how we engage them, or how customers engage us, is basically is in terms of taking us as the experts, or basically consultants who can validate the various different aspects of the system, aspects of open banking when they implement it. So this is basically implemented for a large universal payment solution. Just like our UPI in India, we have the universal payment solution, payment interface, or UPI. Similarly, this US is actually now implementing this universal payment platform, UPP, for one of these largest payment provider. We are supporting them. We are actually, they engage us as a validation provider, trusted validation partner, and we validate them from the perspective of functional as well non-functional, Chetan, if that answers the question.
Thanks, Raja. Thanks for a very interesting presentation. We will now invite Akash from Profile to give his perspective on how Profile has seen this opportunity and helped clients.
Thank you, Chetan. This is Raja from Expleo signing off. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Raja, and thank you, Chetan, for the kind introduction. Well, let me set the context again. Since we were talking more on the open banking and PSD2, let me also give a perspective, because in the interest of all the audience who's listening, is what is the purpose of the entire initiative was basically, first of all, to boost the market innovation in terms of product offering. Even in the last few years, since it's started, as we've already seen some of the case studies we've heard right now, the innovation which is happening in terms of the customer delight, what customer is getting is innovative products. It is boosting competition, enhancing payment security, and allowing to manage the funds effectively and in a better way. So that sets the context for the open banking and PSD2. Now, apparently, Profile Software Group, we have been at the forefront of what is happening, especially in this space. Being a European vendor, we've been servicing this industry for 3 decades now. And just to give you some background, we have been servicing the entire fintech space, the banking space, with this kind of offering. We've got quite a few case studies. In the interest of time, being the second participant, and I'm sure some of the other participants are also waiting to talk about themselves. What I say to all of you is, it is expanding open boundaries, expanding newer horizons, and what is the going forward plan. But before that, I would also like to set the context how dynamic the entire industry has been so far. If you see, in the last 3 years itself, various analysts have been talking, next slide please, have been talking various things. If you see, in 2017, we were talking about the entire digitalization. Although we were talking about open banking and PSD2, but most of the banks, and then the crisis now forced in a much more faster adoption after the COVID-19. We are seeing euphoria of opportunities coming our way. We are seeing a lot of leads coming for this entire need of the open banking and the PSD2 framework requirements across various countries. As a vendor, we've been servicing more than 40 countries today, and with 7 international offices, we are in the forefront of innovation in terms of the banking technologies and the investment and wealth management technologies. Next slide, please. If you see, I'm just talking about most of the analysts in 2018 were talking about loyalty after 2017 and how technology can support the loyalty, as you can see in this slide. And then the perception back then was how technology can enable support just around the customer loyalty. Again, these are research materials we've been seeing and reading. And it is not about the research firm, it is about how dynamic the entire industry has been over the last few years. Next slide, please. Again, I'm being quicker so that everybody gets time. Most of the analysts back then in 2018 were talking about loyalty, as I mentioned to you earlier. Now, suddenly in 2019, loyalty stops not to be the main driver. and issue. Loyalty exists only in terms of the business model of the bank and not around the technology being an enabler. And this was 2019. Next slide, please. 2020, here we are. Customers are not looking to be loyal. They are looking to be having a simple, convenient bank to cover all complex and dynamic needs of theirs. And hence PSD2 and open banking is the future. Customer wants easy to use operations. Forget about bank. I'll give you an example of course, it's not good to name. Let's say I have a Revolut account. Okay. Now, as a fintech firm, I can do everything from that account. I can go to Paris, shop in Paris, pay from my UK account, and get service from Revolut account across all the banks. This is what it brings to the table as a customer. You know, I don't need to go to all banks. I, with my Revolut account, can do everything on the go. While I'm in the lockdown, sitting in Paris, I can still operate, you know. So that is the beauty of what this is all bringing to for all of us. Next slide, please. We've already spoken why just this is not being a part of just banking. It is extending to a lot more areas, and we've already spoken about that. You need to obviously think from a perspective. Currently, everybody's on a lockdown, and you won't believe right now I'm sitting out of my Dubai office, and if I need to operate my UK bank account, I can do that because of the ease of operations I have with the open banking framework in existence, which was not the case earlier. Next slide, please. So all banking transactions to be seen from a single easy to use environment, and this is the need of the hour. Customers are not loyal. Customers want easy to use operations, and this is what we are talking about is the future for the next decade or so. So as I mentioned to you, it is not only extended to just bank account. It talks about extending to Forex transactions. It talks about custodians, investment management, so on. I mean, wide array of offerings could be extended with this entire open framework, which is for us. At the end of the day, the customer is benefiting most with the easy to use operations, cost effective way of operating across all banks, and yes, yet being very, very efficient. Next slide, please. Okay, I'll pause here. Of course, I have to eat my bread and butter. Profile, this gives you a perspective of our offering. We had designed and kept this futuristic requirement much in advance, being servicing financial systems for much longer. We realized there is a need of a completely flexible system. Today, as we speak, we have many case studies of a lendtech firm using the core banking application for lending, extending to, let's say, lending, peer-to-peer lending, alternative finance, leasing and asset finance, personal banking. As I mentioned to you, Islamic finance. Of course, we are ready with Islamic finance. Today, we can service. Today, if you know, open banking is prominent in the GCC market, we are pretty ready with the Islamic banking coverage of ours. Collection, private banking, marketplace lending, payments. All this extending to the treasury aspect of the business is what we can offer from our solution today. So again, I would also like to highlight European core banking provider with 3 decades of experience. All this comes handy with us as a vendor. With the open API secure protocols, we were talking about the tokenization. It's very important. But communication with multiple systems is indeed a very, very sweet spot for the end customer benefiting from the entire scheme of things. Again, there are RTS rules. I will not deep dive into the rules part of it. It's very open and public information. But the next slide will give you a perspective of some of the case studies which I would like to throw some light on. I already mentioned about a digital lending operations, a company called Fiducian in the UK, where we are which is involved in bridge loans and all kinds of lending activities. So we've been servicing them with our banking solution. It allows you to reduce the entire loan origination cost by almost 70%. And why I wanted to give a number and percentage to it, it is actually being efficient for the end customer, and not only from the end customer, the core user of the application is also benefiting from these kind of technologies. And this is very important. So it is linking borrowers to investors, converting loans into tradable securities. The investment management component comes into play, and there we also have a sweet spot. The comprehensive investor portal for the end customer to benefit. It also has a very strong, powerful rules engine, which can accommodate various workflows, and it's highly flexible, configurable by the end user in the application itself. Another case is a
question here.
Yeah.
So on all these organizations, was there a traditional technology already in place to which you integrated to make them open, or it was your solution only?
To be honest with you, they were scouting for various vendors. Most of this entire thing is new. Okay, so they were reaching out to many vendors. Since we were already in the forefront of what we could offer as a solution in terms of the comprehensive coverage, and we've always been near to the regulator of the changes which is happening, and that benefit we got being a European vendor from the beginning itself, of being ready with the open banking and also having a comprehensive coverage. In fact, just before PSD2 and open banking, we were all over the place of selling alternative finance like P2P lending, crowdfunding solution extension from our core banking application. And of course, we have many references of those kind as well. So it was an independent evaluation. Like many of the challenger banks, one of the things, you also highlighted, Chetan, is whether they were having a system. Most of the challenger banks are newer. They are worried about the cost aspect of the technology, which is very important to them. We want to democratize the entire business. We've been at a sweet spot. We are not a cheap vendor, nor are we expensive. We understand the requirements of these startup initiatives, try to be as flexible as possible, trying to meet their business plans objective at the end of the day. So I hope I'm able to answer.
I think that's very good. I think thanks, Akash, for your very interesting perspective. And we'll now move to Valeriy to understand his experiences in Europe and what they've been delivering to the client for real life use cases.
Thank you, Chetan, and thank you everybody for joining.
Thanks, Akash.
Thank you, Akash.
Good afternoon again.
Yeah.
Yes, I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
Thank you, Shida. So yes, indeed, I will give you a perspective more from a RegTech and regulatory solutions perspective. You might ask yourself the question, how does it relate to open banking and APIs? And I will give you a good answer to that. Don't worry about this. So first, short introduction, just a couple of minutes about us. I think we have some customers participating, but most of you might not know us yet. So we are a IMTF group based in Switzerland, founded more than 32 years ago. So we focus on RegTech, compliance, and automation solutions. We today service more than 300 financial institutions, so mostly banks, 99% I would say banks, but more recently also fintechs, insurances, etc., in more than 50 countries in the world. And we also have a local presence in multiple countries now. The closest to you is probably Dubai. Next one, please. So I was saying we focus in three main areas where we provide solutions. Digital process automation, including digital banking. So customer lifecycle management, KYC automation, customer and document management, for example, etc. And also big focus on RegTech and compliance with KYC, anti-money laundering, trading compliance, but also anti-fraud solutions, for example, wholesale, everything in fact related around financial crime prevention and compliance to regulatory needs. Next, please. So we provide a full platform. I will not spend a lot of time on that, but you can see the different modules here of our platform. So again, it focuses around automation, digital banking, and RegTech, everything related to financial crime prevention, starting with KYC, transaction monitoring, fraud prevention, trading compliance, and also more recently FATCA, CRS. So all this is in a platform, but can also be provided separately as per your needs. Next, please. As I said, so we work with a lot of customers, 50 countries, more than 300 banks, any kind of institutions, big, small, different banking business lines. Some of you, I think, are part of our customers here. So around the globe, but also in the Middle East. On the next slide, please. And I also believe we have a few customers there participating today. So we work again mostly with banks, but also with payments providers, for example, money transfer companies, etc. So now I will focus on a specific use case because I think it's interesting for you to hear about the real life case of implementation of our solution and the business needs and the business challenges that we address with. And then the link with open banking is, and that is my view and our view, that open banking is not, or it should not only be related to mostly to payments or access to account information, etc. But you can see this in a broader perspective. You can provide also via APIs that we have in all our solutions, which are exposed to third-party systems. You can provide also, here I will focus on compliance systems, to your open banking partners. You can provide KYC, for example, customer risk evaluation, and even transaction monitoring to your external partners, which can generate eventually some revenue for you. I saw a question earlier from the audience. Somebody was asking how open banking can generate revenue for the bank. So giving access not only to payment systems, but also, let's say, to KYC systems, etc., is a potential opportunity for you. So briefly, the use case, very down to earth, real life, because I believe this is interesting for you. I cannot give the name of the bank because of confidentiality agreement, but based on that, you might eventually guess who the bank is. So it's one of the largest banks in Southeast Asia. It's based in Singapore. As you can see, very large, more than 25,000 employees, 15 countries, 350 billion in total assets, and millions of customers around the globe, mostly focused on Southeast Asia. Next, please. So we have been approached by the bank with a few business challenges that the bank was facing. It was related to most of the customer onboarding process, which was used to be very manual, paper-based, heavy, and slow. So 1 to 3 days to open an account, which is an eternity for nowadays, especially in developed markets like Singapore. It brings also some frustrations to customers and also to relationship managers, especially when talking about private banking. So relationship managers, they want to be able to onboard their very nice multi-million or multi-billion customers on board very quickly, which was not possible in that time, back in that time. And all this relates to high cost of compliance because of the manual processes, because of the slow processes, and also expose the bank to regulatory and KYC risks. Next, please. So taking into account these challenges that we have been approached with, we propose 3 solutions, and we have implemented these solutions with the bank already. We continue the project, but most of the solutions are already live and used by the bank. The first one is our fully automated and digital customer onboarding and customer lifecycle, basically to banks, and not only banks, but to financial institutions, to onboard their customers in fully digital, whenever possible from legal perspective, paperless way. And also it gives the possibility to bank to propose a self-service to their customers. Basically, customers, they can open their accounts, or they can apply for an account opening through internet or through mobile device, whatever support is possible, in a fully automated way, which again limits the cost for the bank and also limits the risks from low quality data, for example, and etc. It includes everything which is needed, all the KYC, CRS checks, all the regulatory checks, etc. It is fully included and automated. The second solution, in order to make all the processes, not only the onboarding but the compliance checks processes within the bank faster, more efficient, and to reduce risk, was our adaptive case manager. Case manager basically allows banks and financial institutions to guide different processes. So here we are focusing on the customer and account opening, to guide the process through different departments, different related decision-making parties, to streamline the whole process, to digitize everything. So the whole process is fully digital, is fully guided by the case manager workflow. It is based on very flexible rules and workflows, which can be configured by the bank itself, even without our intervention. And again, this case manager can be exposed via an open API that we propose to third parties, including to open banking partners, which can be part of this process. Again, fully digital, automated, and very, very flexible solution. And the third one, the third solution, in order to address banks' challenges in terms of KYC checks, customer risk evaluation, and respecting regulatory requirements, basically was our KYC tool solution, which basically proposes two main functionalities. One is checks against lists, so sanctions lists, TEP lists, internal lists, central bank, etc. And the second functionality is enhanced due diligence. So our KYC solution is, it has been proven by challenging it with other leading solutions on the market. It proposes basically the best matching technology today on the market, which is based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, and which results basically in dramatic reduction of false positives in ID and name matching. Some of you are probably sensible to this topic, where basically compliance teams have to investigate hundreds or thousands of false alerts during the KYC process. We are able to reduce these false alerts by a factor of 40, thanks to our very advanced technology based on artificial intelligence and machine learning. Next, please. Second functionality also is the enhanced due diligence. So first one, for the first part of KYC, is to check the customer identity versus lists, and also basically to evaluate the customer risk. The second is the enhanced due diligence. Basically, this is searching within negative news, between social media, RSS feeds, and any other data sources, in fact, in order to evaluate again the customer is involved in some scandals, has a very bad press around the globe, for example, etc., in order to protect the bank from reputational and from regulatory risk. Again, very advanced new generation technology tool, which automates the whole process in a great way. So all these solutions, they are exposed to external, to third-party solutions via open APIs. So this is an opportunity for you, eventually as a bank, to give access, and not for free, to these services, to KYC services, for example, to case management services, to your open banking partners, and ultimately to generate revenue, of course.
Just a
Next
linked
one,
question
please.
here. Given the open APIs which you are offering on the complete regulatory framework and onboarding framework, Have you got opportunities where either regulator, central bank, or client coming back to you and saying, can I offer these for as a community bank or as a bank for all the association of the banks in an open way, or it's always with one of your customers only?
So initially, back in time, in fact, it was used to be with every bank. So every bank had the idea, in fact, to have its own compliance services. It's also somehow a regulatory needs. What we have seen the last couple of years, a few initiatives in North Africa and also in Southeast Asia, mostly started by central banks, including in Bahrain. There is an initiative which is live about a common KYC, shadowed by central bank, if I'm not wrong. So this kind of initiative left by central banks for common KYC, for example, common identification of customers around across the country and available to all the banks through open APIs. For example, common risk evaluation of all the customers, residents of a specific country via a centralized system managed by central bank, and then given access to all the banks in the country via open APIs. So these are the kind of initiatives we have seen in the past couple of years. It's not the rule yet, but I think we'll see more and more.
Sure. And just one more question on given that your European customer base, you're the first one to adopt, and you presented a very interesting case from Southeast Asia. Are you seeing equal appeal of open banking to all the regions, or you were seeing Europe leading and then Asia catching up?
It is quite unequal from our perspective. So our main markets and markets that I know are Europe, Africa, Middle East, and Asia. So it's quite unequal. Here, things in Europe are quite advanced, also thanks to PSD2, which basically does not leave a way or the choice of banks. They do have to open their systems, and there are a lot of startups, fintechs, which take advantage of that. So Europe is somehow, from our perspective at least, leading these initiatives so far. We see more and more in Asia, especially in advanced mature markets like Singapore, Hong Kong, quite a lot of initiatives in the open banking, and much less now in the Middle East and in Africa. So I think this will be the next probably big market and big opportunity for open banking.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Valeriy. It was very interesting to have your view. I'll now invite Codebase, which has been one of the innovators. Raheel, can you hear me?
Yes, Chetan, thank you.
Go ahead and please just tell us what you've been offering to your customers with respect to open banking, and also what you've done at CedarIBSI, and then CedarIBSI can explain the case as well.
Sure. If you can go to the next screen, please. So Codebase Technologies is a global open API banking solutions provider. We are headquartered in Dubai with offices and presence across 4 continents. And we are working with financial institutions, both in conventional and Islamic institutions, as well as emerging fintechs. And today we have one of our fintech clients as a use case to present their journey with Codebase on the open API and open banking perspective. We have a product called DigiBank, which is a comprehensive bank-in-a-box solution covering complete channels, integration, backend, core, helping digital banks go live in less than 3 to 4 months. Next slide, please. So we have been running some great milestones in the region. We've done the first Bahrain's digital bank. We're currently working on the first UAE's challenger bank implementation. And I have a lot of common friends over here as well on the same project. We've been working on different solutions in terms of inspiring from blockchain, core banking, providing services to our banks from a legacy perspective. So whoever has legacy systems, we've been servicing those customers, making them digital, making them go digital, as well as to adopt open banking and explore open banking avenues. Next slide. We've won some awards as well recently from a fintech perspective and from a blockchain utilization perspective. And from a solution offering, we are focusing on 6 major solution sets. New age banking, which is completely API-based banking, as you've known, targeting towards a new generation, the new segments. Then the digital innovation lab. We're helping regulators, accelerators around the world set up these innovation labs, end-to-end innovation labs, which are not just sandboxes, but they are actual technical plus sandbox available over there, where they can go out and do R&D, do innovations. Fintechs can join in, and we're also working with the CedarIBSI FinTech lab on putting up an Islamic fintech lab in the region from that solution perspective. We're also focusing on banking as a service, and as Chetan mentioned, that is there a need to basically do a hosted solution or a managed services based solution, be it from KYC perspective, be it from digital banking perspective. So we are very heavily invested into this segment as well. Today's topic, open banking. Yes, we are very much helping our traditional banks as well as our challenger and fintechs to adopt and to utilize open banking beyond AISP and PISP, as I mentioned. So we do support them in terms of our consent management, be it PFM solutions and data aggregation, but it also goes beyond in terms of connecting into different other service areas when it comes to open APIs. From a product offering perspective, the Fintegrator product is the digital open banking product, which has 300 plus out of the box process APIs, primarily coming from the banking perspective, which allows any legacy institution using any legacy core banking or any other system easily go digital and basically publish open APIs from them. So we work with Open API framework in compliance with them and allow those frameworks to basically be implemented locally and try to localize them as much as possible, depending on the regulatory requirements. So from our Fintegrator perspective, we have over 300 APIs, and you can see from onboarding, from document management, ATM, accounts, fraud and AML, and at the last, logistics and communication. So we've started building new APIs for non-banking partners, a very seamless solution, a very seamless platform, which allows the bank to utilize and leverage their legacy systems as much as possible. And we support cross platforms, protocols, multiple protocols, both new protocols and as well as old protocols, in basically allowing them to become open banking compliant. Some of our out of the box API connectors, which we have already worked with and already are available on our system, including IMTF as well. We've been working together on a very exciting project in the Middle East, getting the first UAE challenger bank up and running. And we have other, these are all vendors whose API connectors are already available on our platform. So which helps the bank basically cut the time to basically go to market and implement these solutions. So they are readily available from an integration perspective, readily available from a business process oriented perspective. And we have standardized these APIs. So tomorrow, if there is another vendor from within the same category, we can easily assist the bank to have a choice between vendors as well. So we are vendor agnostic. However, we work with our vendor community and help them come and standardize their APIs and are able to offer it for connecting into legacy systems as well. So I would now basically hand it over to Timmy, who's from ZiggyPay. We've been working with ZiggyPay in this region as well. in basically getting them through their the exciting platform from a recurring and invoicing perspective. So I will hand it over to Timmy now.
So Timmy, welcome. If you can just quickly give us a bit of a background about ZiggyPay and also your experience of how solution providers have made the difference to your journey or implementing the Open API.
Okay, thank you very much. Look, there's if we go to the next slide, there's a big problem in the UAE and the wider GCC markets, and I could say even including some developing countries. At the moment, check and cash is king. Though e-commerce is heavily used now for ordering e-commerce goods and food delivery and transport, and with the COVID-19, that's actually accelerated e-commerce. Interesting enough, services such as rental payments, leasing, school fees, and all that are still predominantly check or cash based. That results in a lot of cost of handling. And checks are expensive to produce and to maintain, and they're slow and they're prone to errors such as that something's wrong with the check, or even the signature doesn't match. Reconciliation in a lot of companies, it takes a lot of time and effort. So the larger the company and the more customers they have, the more resources that they need to manually reconcile payments on a daily basis. So there isn't really any solution providers out there that can go end to end. So what we are is ZiggyPay is an aggregated reconciliation platform that we provide our clients, we call the billers, and our consumers who are the payers, the ability to be able to pay their services via electronic payments such as direct debit, credit card, and other different type of payments. We provide enhanced capabilities so they can agree to a direct debit online, whether from their account or card. We give them visibility aware that when the direct debit is going to be taken out of their account, give even the payers and the billers the control to modify, edit, or even delete the payment. We're also providing over time more alternative channels such as Apple Pay, Google Pay, the wallets, Chinese wallets, international payments, and even direct transfers. So the idea is to offer payers the ability to pay their services, especially if they're reoccurring payments, across many multiple payment options, giving our clients the ability to minimize their human resources, the cost and the time and error and cost of processing checks and cash. If you'd like to go to the next slide, please. So we provide an app and a portal that allows our payers to download the app or log onto the website and effectively log in and enter in their account or card details. They get notified when there's a new direct debit agreement. So if I've entered into a new rental agreement, my landlord or the property management group can send me a direct debit request, which I can accept online. Challenger Pay is all API driven, and this is a very important step for us. So every service that is built for Challenger internally is also open to expose to banks, third parties, and our clients. So the banks and clients can actually rebrand it and use the Challenger Pay services. The services, the benefits of ZiggyPay is obviously the reduction of check handling, e.g. bouncing of checks for insufficient funds, the signature doesn't match, and ensuring that customers have visibility. So I know that our direct debit is coming out on the 15th of this month and I'm notified. Next slide, please. So how does ZiggyPay integrate into banks and software providers? As I said before, everything's API driven. So we provide an app, we have web portals, and we have APIs that we expose to software vendors. So if I'm a school, as an example, I'm using a software system, our APIs can integrate into those software systems. We run on a core banking system and a state-of-the-art middleware services that we then use to connect to our banking partners. So the solution is bank agnostic and is designed that it can work in multiple countries simultaneously. Now, our UAE objective, so if you look internally into the UAE, obviously, is we are looking to take on cash and check. So within a couple of years, everyone would have forgotten that they've had to pay with post-dated checks, and they're using Ziggy Pay to pay all their electronic services via electronic payments. We also plan to offer in the future what we call a buy now, pay later scheme to reduce the impact that businesses and expats have when they come to the country with the massive upfront rents and schooling fees. Our solution is completely, as I said, API driven. We are connecting to our bank partners via API, and we're exposing our services via APIs as well. We're offering many multiple
question there. In terms of the end customer, who is it through bank that you sell, or your app has independent services which a subscriber subscribes to as a corporate? How do you approach your end customer?
So sure. So we're an aggregated platform. So ideally, today, if I'm a customer, I would have to go to my bank and apply for a merchant facility. I have to apply for a direct debit facility, international facilities, and all that. What Ziggy Pay is an aggregated service. So with one application, you get access to many different channels. We have established 1 or 2 banking partners in countries, which we leverage their services. So we connect with them for the direct debit agreement, as an example, and we integrate with them to receive a daily reconciliation file, which we then expose back via API or via reports to our clients. So ideally, when Muhammad Ali makes a payment, their systems know immediately once we've reconciled it.
And do you see an opportunity where potentially banks can take you as a partner and potentially white label your Ziggy Pay offering as part to their MSME or SME customers?
Absolutely. Some banks won't have credit card facilities, as an example. Some banks are still very in the early stage in their direct debit side. So some banks will only offer direct debit for the loans, as an example. So the services, as I said, is API and white labeled. Everything that can be done on an app or a portal can be exposed. It can even go for banks, it can go for billers. So if we talk about a very large property management group, as an example, they might say, you know what, I don't want my customers going onto the Ziggy Pay app or the website. I want them to use my website or my app. So that's what Ziggy can provide, and that is all powered via our open API system.
Excellent.
Now, just one last thing. Maybe if we can move on to the next slide. We go to the next slide. Keep going, keep going, keep going. So what we were looking for in a tech provider, a partner, we needed a system that was robust and flexible. So it had to be scalable. We knew that we were going to enter into multiple countries, which each country having their own jurisdiction, their own rules, their own legislation. Some central banks are open, some central banks are not. Some banking partners are, they've got their own API management system, which we can integrate with, great. Others need more coaching. We knew that we needed a system, an API system that could integrate to many different types of clients, such as banks, non-banking partners, and the client software system. We wanted a system that could continuously integrate new services. So as new payment options come in, or new KYC products come in, or new social scoring solutions come in, we wanted to be at the forefront and be able to integrate them. And we needed access to a vendor who already had many of those APIs already available. And lastly, that they needed to make sure that that tech vendor had a complete stack that today operated open API. So we didn't want to be the first fintech that they were using their services. There had to be an existing vendor already catering for these type of services. So just lastly, we decided to select Codebase technologies. We created a pilot in Australia, And within 2.5 months, we had apps, we had APIs, we had a core banking system, we had a middleware system integrated into credit card systems and into a software system. And we surprised, even when we came to the UAE and we showed some clients, they were so surprised how quick that we were able to set up a pilot. So we were also looking for a partner. So we didn't want a vendor, we wanted a partner, someone that could help us, not only on the technical side, but give us advice on the region. And Codebase has been a fantastic partner of ours, and we appreciate their support. And in fact, I've now been introducing them to many other fintechs and banks in Australia and some software vendors who want to come into the region and are now looking at leveraging the Codebase tech stack.
So I think, Timmy, just a couple of more questions from end user perspective. So how much time did you take right from ideas to innovation to design to execution for the CedarIBSI offering?
So we probably started last year. We explored the market for about a month or 2 months. I signed an agreement with Codebase in January after we did some workflowing, got a cost from them. We started the official pilot development in February, and by, I think it was early April, we had a pilot. And that's not a smoke and mirror pilot. It was API-driven core banking app for both the billers, which is our clients, and we had our app that we could then demonstrate. So we could show a transaction occurring on an app would actually flow in through to the biller portal. A direct debit agreement that a biller set up would flow automatically to the payer, and once that's agreed, the biller would get notified immediately. So I was very impressed with the Codebase technology stack, and I've been one of their biggest champions, especially in Australia, where many of the neobanks are starting to talk to them, as well as some software vendors as well.
Sure. So questions, I think, let's take some interesting questions from Vinu, who wants to know from post-dated check perspective, it also acts as a security. So what happens to that part of the transaction when customers moves to CedarIBSI as well?
Well, the good thing about the central bank is we've been talking with the central bank for some time, and there's some good news, and I don't want to promise a date, but they're working on the idea that a direct debit will have equal weight to a check in regards to any civil matters.
Legal matters.
And legal matters. Now, we know that it used to be a criminal matter if your check bounced. That's kind of morphed into a certain limit. So if it's under 200,000 dirhams, I believe, it's a civil matter. Still painful to solve, but anything above that is a criminal matter. I think also is that for a lot of, especially with the COVID-19 and the population being, people are coming and going, the ability for clients to offer a recurring online payment, especially if it's monthly, is an attractive way to retain their customers, as well as to attract new customers to their portfolio. So in the UAE, rent is actually starting to go down, a way that a landlord can compete to say, hey, look, I'll just give you direct debit, no checks. You can use card or account payment, make it easier for you. And that we've spoken to some real estate agents who see that as a win for them and a way to keep the rental prices.
Understood. Yeah. Understood. I think also long-term people have to understand that checks will go, so they have to get used to the new way of operating model, and the legal and commercial system will change. So again, a question, interesting one from Bran, and this is, I'll give it to Valeriy to answer. Given there is no regulation in Middle East in most markets except Bahrain, what do payment providers do? Do they invest? Do banks invest? Given that EU jurisdictions are not applicable here and it's not permitted under the local law, or should they just wait?
Yes, I can talk about our customers. In virtually all the cases, our customers are global. So they have global operations, including on European markets. And you know, as soon as a bank or a payment service provider has operations in Europe, they have to comply with European regulations and with international regulations, or as long as they have to work with international bank or correspondent bank, etc. So what we see, and more, it's since the beginning, since the founding of let's say, a payment services provider, new startup, one of the first investments, well, goes into technology, innovation, etc., but also more and more into compliance. Because if not compliant, basically they are exposed to a huge regulatory risk, and all the operations are exposed to a risk. They can even be closed, even if regulators are still a bit lousy with new startups, but the risk is very high. So what we see is investment since the beginning of a new open banking initiative. So that's my experience so far.
Thanks, Valeriy. So question for Raheel. Raheel, what do banks and PISP or AISPs look for from a solution provider when it comes to open banking? How would this make a selection?
First thing is they should be able to leverage their existing system as much as possible. That's the first criteria, because no one is in the position right now to rip and replace their existing systems to be in compliance with these requirements. So they are looking for a solution which allows them to leverage as much as possible and becomes a complementary solution to their existing tech stack. So that is one of the biggest concern which the banks have. Two reasons. First of all, the cost involved in it, as well as the time to market. Because if you are late by 1.5 years after replacing your existing core banking, there's no point of it. So you're late out of the market.
Understood. Very interesting. So moving to Akash. Akash, given some European experiences you have, I think one of the clear question is, what is the implication given Europe has a clear regulation and many Middle East organizations have some amount of Europe branches or Europe operations. So from a European perspective, do you see Middle East organization compliant? And if to what extent GDPR and some of the other regulations are applicable from Open API perspective?
Well, this goes as quite handy. If you see most of our clients here, of course, I've shared a couple of references with quite a few of those. You know, it comes as a default from our application perspective. You know, since we're talking more around the PSD2, the directive clearly has a deadline of January, I guess, 2021, if I'm not wrong, from the UK perspective, yes, for PSD2. And also from the regulatory point of view, the system by default should take care of the GDPR, PSD2, Basel III frameworks, which are also going hand in hand besides what is needed in an open banking system. We've got quite a few cases of record time implementation given the history we have. We have few banks who we've delivered all put together. In fact, as you know, we also specialize in treasury and investment management, where we have done the entire digital banking, core banking, along with the treasury in a record period of time of 12 months, going fully live. So we have these cases where, as someone pointed out, in terms of time to market, and one of my few slides, we were talking about how the entire dynamics are changing. You know, the business has no time to really wait for 2-3 years for going live. It's really frustrating. I, being a banker myself before moving to technology, I know how frustrating it is when you are dealing with a vendor where, you know, timelines are getting delayed. So again, it's a marriage, but at the same time, as a vendor, you need to think from the perspective of time to market. And I believe there the experience plays a vital role of similar experiences in some of the markets which can be replicated. Now, one of the questions you asked on the UAE Middle East framework, you know, I think needless to even mention, a lot of things are being adapted in the GCC market, looking at what is happening in the UK market. A lot of our clients are actually having both the businesses in UK and the GCC markets. So it's just a matter of time where, of course, the trends we are already seeing with Bahrain, I believe GCC is going to be adopting all this, and we are already ready with our teams supporting the region. We already have some vendors here talking about some references in the region. I believe exciting time for the end customer to benefit, I would say.
Thank you so much, Akash, and everyone for spending last 90 minutes giving a very, very interesting insights. And all the participants, we had 150 participants in all. I think still 95 are logged in. So many, many thanks to all of you to share your knowledge. And the series of FinTech Lab would continue next month again with a new topic. Much appreciate all your support, gentlemen. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you very much, everybody, to all our panelists and the participants. Thank you very much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you.